It's 9:10 Eastern Time, the only time zone that is undefeated in their CFB 25 online dynasty. That means it's time for C2C Live. That's Matt Bruning. I'm Austin Nace. On a much quieter version of tonight's show, no Felix. We're going to talk camp news. We're going to redraft the 2023 freshman class, but we start with the state of the running back position in college football. Matt, I'm going to toss this over to you. You've been doing a little bit of research looking into the 2025 freshmen upcoming here. Yeah. And you've noticed a little bit of a trend here in terms of, maybe some guys that don't fit what we traditionally think of when we think of an NFL running back.
Yeah, and I wish I could remember the name of this person, so I apologize. Please shout me out in the Discord if you listen to this, and I will make sure to mention this on the next show. Me and Felix did a Discord live probably like 2 weeks ago now at this point. It's just he was driving, wanted to get in. We were talking. It's actually, we did a ton of talking about Emmett Mosley and that as well, the freshman wide receiver at Stanford. And someone brought up the fact that, and I think they actually have mentioned it in the comments too in one of the shows, like they are worried about the running back position moving forward. And we were kind of having a discussion about it. And Felix said in there, he's like, we should put a pin in this and talk about it later. And I did want to at some point talk about it because I was just counting up the class. And so right now, if you look at our top 50 running backs on the website, there is, give or take, because obviously some of these guys can possibly come back, 29 of those running backs going to the NFL possibly within the next year. All 29 can go next year. I mean, that's obviously over half of our top 50 going. And the running back classes, I was a little question I was hoping you were going to help me out on there. You didn't, but that's okay. I got there on my own. The big fear for me has been, if you go back and look at our past couple classes, I mean, what is it? CJ Baxter was tier 1 for us last year. Now, I think Felix, Alfred, and myself had Justice Haynes in tier 1, but the rest of you guys didn't. I think some of you had he was right on the verge for everybody. So it's not like we didn't like him, but we've kind of struggled to really kind of find those tier 1 running backs over the past couple of years. And if you go back through 2017, I just went 2017 through 2020, upwards of 20 running backs in those class out of the top 30 were already at the NFL height and weight that we want when we look at certain things from athleticism to just obviously putting on some weight coming into college. So they were already kind of hitting thresholds that we wanted coming into college, where over the past couple years, you're looking at upwards of maybe 13 in 2025, 13 in 2024, 12 in 2023. And I don't remember what 2022's was, but it was right around that 13 range where these guys are coming in lighter. We see a lot of these running backs now are within the as Mike Valerie loves to tell me that I love the small running backs, these guys that are like 180 pounds, 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", where realistically, and I can't remember the exact number, but Chris Moxley's talked about this before, like you can say that they add it's like roughly 10 to 12 pounds.
Yeah, about 12 pounds on average, yes.
So, I mean, you're realistically wanting guys to come in probably at least 190. If you're hoping that the 12 pounds come in, so they're at least a little over 200, and we're just not seeing that. Like a lot of these guys now are coming in, it's in the 185 to 188 range. They're a little bit on the smaller side, and I just don't know what that means for the running back. I am worried that is going to become the position that is, from all intents and purposes, the weakest position from an elite standpoint, because we saw obviously Alfred, the recruiting team, Alfred just wrote an article, go check it out. The QSI, the quarterback star index, talking about that from a quarterback standpoint, feels like we get at least one or two star quarterbacks every single year and some sleepers in there, wide receivers every year. At least since we've been doing this, I feel like we've had at least 3 or 4 guys that we really like up in that tier 1. And we've really struggled to have, what was the biggest year? Was it Travion and Singleton? It's probably been our biggest year at running back tier 1s with 2.
So Travion was the year before Singleton, and that
right.
Travion was the year before we put out our first freshman supplemental.
Right.
Guide. But I can say in our first freshman supplemental guide, I pulled it up here while we were talking.
Okay.
We actually did have 4 tier 1 running backs in that class, and they were Jadon Blue, Nicholas Singleton, Branson Robinson, and Trevante Citizen. Injuries robbed us of 2 of those players before we even really got to see them going. Blue could see a little bit of a resurgence this year, and I think it's fair to say that Blue and Singleton have both been a little little disappointing so far, based on kind of what we expected. That brings me to my first point here, which is that, we lost 2 of the 4 guys that we like due to injury. It's a very tough position.
It is, yeah.
From a longevity standpoint to play. And that's why I think, it's how many kids want to play running back anymore? Because I think
bring that up. Yeah.
We let quarterbacks run. We let, in air quotes. Offenses now are more open to letting the quarterback run. It was before, if you just had a guy that was so good with the ball in his hands, and he's just like clearly the best kid on your team as like an 11-year-old, you just put him a running back as long as they weren't enormous. And because it was just real easy to get the ball to them. They kind of grew up playing running back. They develop all those skills, and then they probably go on to play running back in the NFL. But now it seems like from what I can see and tell, a lot of these schools, if they've just got a dude, you put him at quarterback.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really have to know how to throw. You can run a lot of wildcat stuff. We're getting a lot of these kind of wildcat quarterbacks switching to running back in college now. Just off the top of my head, I know this season Cam Davis is doing it. Cameron Dickey's doing it. There was somebody else as well I know that I was fairly interested in that had played a lot of quarterback in high school. But I'm wondering, the NFL has shown us, they don't want to pay these guys. They're going to run them into the dirt. They're not going to treat them respectfully. Yeah. I do think that's probably impacting some of this, where if you're really good with the ball in your hands, you're either becoming a quarterback, or quarterbacks are getting so much better at that level that it's a little safer to play wide receiver now. You'll get the ball to you probably most likely if you're playing for a decent team.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the NFL has shown that they've devalued the running back position, which I also think is now really starting to show its way in the lower levels of football as well, which I think then brings me to, and another reason I was thinking about this is last year I talked about how, granted a lot of this clearly has to do with injury on the Malachi Nelson part, but like I kind of talked about how I felt safer taking a guy like CJ Baxter because of the running back position. I kind of feel like those guys now are going to be propped up even more than ever moving forward, because if we're only going to get like one of those guys in a class, when you're looking at it from a Campus2Canton perspective and it going into that NFL pipeline, like you are really kind of losing those, multiple bites at the apple kind of thing, where it's okay taking out, like I like Cameron Cook. We'll talk about him later because I'm sure I'll draft him when we redraft the 2023 class. Like I
won't. So if someone's going to here, it's got to be you.
It will be me. But like I feel fairly good about his what I expect his college production to be, but you have to be worried about what he's going to be going into. If I understand that they said he's up to like 198, but like, is it really like 194? Like, what are we really looking at?
That was right after he just went out for a big lunch, and he hadn't
exactly.
It was all sorts of drank a gallon of water. Yeah.
He hadn't done like the cleansing of the system or anything like that yet. So yeah, it's very intriguing to me to see how that goes moving forward, especially with just the massive, 7 doesn't sound like a lot, but that's just the top 30. And I mean, when you're losing like 7 of those guys to class, again, I think you're just losing like that kind of bigger bites at the apple, and you're really losing out on that shot of those guys moving up into the NFL.
I will also ask you, I do think the NFL, at least in recent years, is skewing a little smaller overall. At the running back position, It hasn't seemed to deter teams quite as much. And I think a lot of that's because there's no real appetite for bell cow running backs anymore, or at least not like in the traditional sense. You're not looking for a 235 banger that you can use all 3 downs, goal line, all that kind of stuff, and really not have to take them out. So I do think, that potentially broadens our range a little bit. And some of these guys are absurd athletes that are coming out now running back. Like I'm thinking just from this year's class, like Caden Durham, who's going to LSU, is I forget what his like 100 and 200 whatever track times are, but they're fast. Like not quite chain fast, but they're fast. And he's not the only one. There's a couple other, some of those guys that are kind of in that mold as well. So, they would have played slot receiver before, and now they're kind of playing as like a scat-ish back. I don't know. I mean, I think it probably also matters a little bit less if you're really, really fringy, but I think it definitely is interesting. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, It'll be interesting to see how the NFL drafts these guys moving forward, because I do remember I said that on I say recent show. I mean, that feels like every show has been recent. And you did correct me on the fact that they hadn't drafted as many running backs under 200 pounds as I had thought they had. It has obviously was Gibbs obviously was last year, and there was someone else over the past couple. Chain went fairly early as well. But again,
James Cook, I think it was. I think he was sub 200 when he came out. He was close to 200.
With Chain and Gibbs though, like you get it, because Chain has like, I say Olympic speed, but like he's extremely fast. He has like a trait that stands out. Gibbs was just an incredible running back. You mentioned Caden Durham. I pulled it up real quick. His 100 meter was 10.25, 97th percentile, 200 meter 21.12, 93rd percentile. So I mean, very good. I'll just be curious to see if that, or I guess how that transitions in the NFL, because I still think we'll obviously get a handful of those guys every year. Will it be that? Because I kind of feel like that's where the NFL is now too, right? There's probably only a handful of bell cows really in the NFL. Most of those guys are kind of in timeshares. So like maybe that's just making its way into college football. Maybe it won't matter. I mean, I don't know of just thinking off the top of my head, what I feel like the past couple of years, the top running backs on the college side of things scoring you points have not necessarily been guys that you're like expecting to go into the NFL. And be your lead like, guys. It's probably the last one. Because I don't think because of the way Gibbs was used at Alabama, he wasn't even that high scoring. So
yeah, I mean, we're gonna say that, and then he was gonna be like RB 17 or something that season. I think he did fine for himself, but it wasn't, wasn't game breaking like we thought it could be. Yeah. All right, well, something to keep an eye on there. And I think if you've listened to Alfred, who was on here last week, 2 weeks ago, last week, he mentioned that running back class doesn't look quite as strong next year. I think that kind of is the sentiment of the rest of the recruiting team. I have actually been digging a lot deeper on wide receiver quarterback when I've been watching so far this year, because I literally have our running backs graded yet, because I'm just like, everyone just like the running back class is bad. I'm like, I'll get to it later. I'll drag my feet on that. But it is something worth thinking about as you are drafting in your Devy, your C2C leagues over the next couple of years. We're going to talk about some news, camp news, a little bit of recruiting update. Before we do that, guys, some housekeeping. Felix will drive here to PA from Louisville and knock on my door at 4 a.m. He leaves now, probably. If I don't mention it, he wants to get this video to 100 likes. I don't think he can do it. I don't think we can do it. That's up to you guys. That's all on you. That's all I'm saying. 100 likes. Subscribe to the YouTube channel while you're here if you have not already. Home Field Apparel. That's a Home Field shirt, Matt, that you're wearing?
It is, yeah.
Me
my Texas
too.
One.
Whoa, this is one. So Home Field thought they were funny. They sent me a West Virginia shirt in a mystery box. As a Pitt fan, I was a little upset about it, but it's very comfy. I use it to mow the lawn and other things.
That's why I won't do the mystery box, because I know I'm just going to get a bunch of gear from that team up north. And I mean, it does get kind of cold here. Maybe I'll throw it in as like a little bit of a fire starter in my fireplace. But
I assume they send schools that nobody wants to buy. Because I have not gotten like a powerhouse program in any of my mystery boxes, and maybe somebody can correct me.
Trying to rid a product. That's it. That's what they're saying.
I've enjoyed every single shirt that I've gotten, even the West Virginia one. I get some usage out of, but they're not sending me Ohio State, Texas stuff in the mystery boxes. Is all I'm saying. We do have a promo code over with them though. Comfiest clothing I own. I'm actually wearing a pair of their sweatpants too right now. Promo code Campus, the number 2 Canton, all one word there. It's going to get you 15% off your first purchase. And then we're partnering with Underdog right now as well, guys. They just released their CFB best ball stuff for the year. They're still putting out contests. And as far as I know, they're going to be doing some in-season contests as well. So if you use promo code C2C on your next deposit, you'll get a deposit match up to $250. So we'll give you the info you need to win it back and then some. All right, news. Andrew Marsh, wide receiver, top 10 kid in the composite, I believe. We're very close to it. Yeah. Committed to Michigan here in the past couple of days. He is a high 4-star receiver. Felix has him described here, and I actually have my own scouting report, so I'll pull that up because I just don't trust Felix.
No. It's actually mine. So this is my show sheet. So this is all my stuff that I
actually do trust this. All right. Matt,
this is my stuff.
Tell me about Andrew Marsh then. Give me the rundown here on him.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I watched, so I did haven't done like a full grade of him yet. I very much like you. Actually, I've been doing mostly quarterbacks. I think I'm through 24 quarterbacks now. Trying to do quarterbacks and wide receivers because, as you mentioned, our recruiting team is not very high on the running back. So I figured I've got time to get to those guys. But a 4-star in the composite, top 10 through most of. I think the only one who didn't have him top 10 was on 3. Everybody else did. Contested catch monster, has really great hands, has a lot of highlight catches on his reel with like one-handed catches going up over defensive backs to get the ball, really attacks the ball in the air. But I don't love the landing spot of Michigan. I talked about it in the video. Like, who's the last wide receiver that you can remember from Michigan that was like dominant? Was it Braylon Edwards? Like, is that the last one?
Yeah.
I mean, who came after? Well, Shoelace was after Braylon Edwards, right? But he wasn't like a dominant like wide receiver. He was more like that guy who's used all over the field. Just incredible, incredible athlete
for the most part, right? Denard. And then
he
played
did.
running back.
I don't know why I was thinking wide receiver. Yes, he did play mostly. What was it, like a wildcat quarterback kind of thing, wasn't it? But what I brought up in the video is like, because I actually think he's a decent wide receiver. But, like, how worried are we that he chose to go to Michigan with Alex Orji, who, I mean, right now we don't know what he's going to be as a passer. We've really not seen anything, so we can't say for sure if he's going to be good or bad. He has 3 years left of eligibility, too. If I knew Jaden Davis was going to be the quarterback, I'd feel a little bit better. I mean, I do view him as very much a game manager, but he's a guy who could throw the ball up to Marsh and let him go get it. Sharon Moore, at times, made it look like he was opening up that offense. We don't really know what that team's going to look like this year. It's going to be very intriguing, but like, I feel like do we lose faith in a guy like Marsh just because he's going to Michigan? Because that has kind of bit us. Now, I don't want to it's kind of bit us in the butt a little bit in the past with like a guy like Evan Stewart. And I'm not trying to compare him to Evan Stewart because I don't think he's nearly the route runner that Evan Stewart was. But like, we were a little bit afraid of Evan Stewart when he first came because he was going to that Jimbo Fisher offer and we didn't like it. So we kind of held that against him a little bit and dropped him a little bit in our rankings. Like, does that affect your mindset at all on Marsh with him going to Michigan? Or is it just kind of like because we do have that in our grades. It is part of our grading system for those people who don't know.
Yeah. So there are enough unknowns with Michigan for me to just remain agnostic on the landing spot. I am treating it as neither a positive nor a negative. I am putting literally a middle of the road point total in for landing spot with Michigan with, new head coach. Like you said, will he open it up a little bit more? Is Alex Orji capable of opening it up more? Will it be Alex Orji? There's a lot of questions there. I will say Andrew Marsh, the player, I'm not a huge fan of.
He's more of a Felix wide receiver than he is a your receiver.
Yeah. So I just wrote down, like long strider, but struggles with acceleration at times, used a lot in the YAC game in high school. He's a lot more physical than his weight and size would suggest. But he really struggles with consistency in his route running, is often caught off balance and can be bullied despite his superior athleticism and strength. Not necessarily things that, I think the bare minimum for like things that I think are translatable from high school to college, because obviously, there's so many different variables, is like just coordination and movement skills. Mm-hmm. And I think at times he struggles with a couple of those building block type things to build further on. So I'm not a huge fan of him. I don't think he's like terrible. I actually want to pull up my 2024 freshman and see where his grade as of today would have landed him last year. So Andrew Marsh, his grade last year would have gotten him as my wide receiver. Oh boy, 28.
Okay.
So in a respectable range. Guys that literally were almost the exact same grade: Courtney Crutchfield, Terry Bussey, Mario Craver. So those are guys that people are moderately excited for.
Yeah.
But so I don't want to hold the landing spot against him. I'm a little more just concerned about the player himself. I don't know. I mean, because he's not even like that big. Like,
no, he's like,
it's like
I had
180 or something like that. Like,
he's
not a big dude.
We have him at 6 foot 175. Okay. I was going to bring up his mile per hour is we have him at 20.5, which is 34 percentile. He is an 81 percentile athlete, but a lot of that comes from just like how good his broad and high jump are. So that's kind of what really buoys him up in that category.
Yeah. So, an interesting player. I bet he will be a name that kind of goes, moderately early in supplemental drafts, Debbie drafts, things like that next year. Maybe not for me. Maybe not for me. The other name that I wanted to highlight here real quick, Matt, Jamie French is a 5-star wide receiver in the class and is actually a player that earned a tier 1 designation from me, which is essentially a 5-star in our grading system. He is announcing his commitment on August 30th. He was initially committed to Alabama when Nick Saban was there and then decommitted immediately after that switch there. It has sounded like after that, it's been a competition between Texas and Ohio State. I've been hearing Texas. Matt, you're the Ohio State guy. Have they given up all hope here?
I mean, I don't think so. I think it would be great, obviously, if he went there. In my opinion, they seem to have kind of swung and missed so far in that 2025 class. I think the highest guy they have right now is like a middling 4-star, if I'm remembering correctly, for Ohio State's. I know they have a pretty good running back, and I always forget what his name is. But wide receivers, I don't feel like. Go ahead.
They have Bo Jackson.
Yeah. So that's all. Yeah. And I think, yeah, it's Bo Jackson. Yeah. And not that Bo Jackson. But I would love for him to go there. Also, because I feel like that room, I talked about it whenever I've talked about how, I think Carnell Tate is kind of being valued too highly. Like, I think that room really has a chance to open up next year. And I do think French could kind of come and step in and be what I think Jeremiah Smith will be for that room this year as a true freshman. So I would love for him to go there. But Texas makes a lot of sense too, because that room opens wide up. I mean, you got likely, who was it that transferred? Was it Silas Bolden?
Yeah.
Bolden, Golden, and Bond likely all probably are gone. Maybe Golden stays if he, but who knows what's going to be. There's a chance all three of those guys go. And it's really just kind of Jonte Cook. I mean, I know Ryan Wingo has really gotten a lot of love this offseason for what he's been doing as a true freshman. They also brought in, why am I forgetting his name? The other true freshman was Aaron Butler, but I haven't heard as much about him. But I mean, French, I think, is better than Butler anyways. So there's a chance that he goes out there maybe as a starter with obviously Arch Manning throwing the ball, because that's the other thing with Ohio State. I don't really know what that quarterback room is going to look like. I think most of the recruiting team would agree with the statement. Taven St. Clair is by far the best quarterback on Ohio State's roster, and he's not even on the roster yet. But I don't know that he will start as a true freshman, assuming he stays committed to Ohio State. So I would love if he went there. We have him as which I actually found very interesting, because I thought, in my opinion, on his film, he popped more than what it shows in here. We only have him as like a 66 percentile athlete in the system. Now, he is over 21 miles per hour, but a lot of it looks like just because of his height and weight. He's not listed. He's listed 6'1", 184. Doesn't have a great 100-meter time either, down in like the 10 percentile. So that's kind of what I think is really dragging him down in our athlete database. But overall, I think a really good and fun player. I think he'd be fine wherever he goes. Personally, obviously, I'm wearing the Texas shirt, but the Ohio State stuff behind me, like I'd love for him to go to the Ohio State University.
Yeah, I don't have a great feel on which of those landing spots would be better for him, because I do think Texas especially has shown a real willingness there under Steve Sarkisian to dip into the portal every year if the opportunity arises. And I think, you were just talking about that room clearing out. There's also a decent chance that like none of those dudes except for Bolden are gone next year.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, they could all come back. Golden is a true junior. Bond's a true junior. So I'm not sure I love Texas for him overall for that reason. A little bit scary. Ohio State, I was looking at, because I do remember. So they have Quincy Porter coming in next year, who's kind of a bigger bodied guy. Yeah. Traditional X is just like thrown around so much nowadays, but I do think that's more what he profiles as for now. I have Porter ranked lower than I had Andrew Marsh graded, although not by a lot. Not a huge fan of him, although there's some room for growth. And then they do have this other kid coming in who I actually like, and I didn't get a grade on him yet, but Desi Jones, I think is how you say his name.
I have not gotten it.
He's wide receiver 28 in the composite. I like how he moves quite a bit. I think he's really, really interesting. So, but yeah, I mean, I think he would round out either of those groups coming in next year pretty well. And Texas did miss out on DeCorian Moore earlier. Yeah, who I think they thought they had him in the bag, and then ended up committing to a different bag at Oregon. I think Texas needs him more.
Yeah.
And I do think he's going to Texas. So, but I think he'll be fine either place. Really, best case scenario would be he'd go back to Bama because I think he would be seamless there.
Yeah, I mean, him and Ryan Williams would be a very intriguing wide receiver core. I just want to bring this up real quick. Cam Ward, truther. So you asked the question about Malachi Nelson losing the battle at Boise State. We will actually talk more about Malachi Nelson, I assume, later at some point.
Let's talk about it right now. This is a good segue because we were going to talk camp news here, and we have a couple of quarterback starters named, and we didn't have this one necessarily on the list, but I think by now,
just so Felix doesn't yell at us after the fact. Cam Ward Truther, for those of you listening on the podcast, asked in the comments, what's going to happen with Nelson now that he's lost the quarterback battle at Boise State? Does he transfer again? Has he just waited out for 2025? He is only a redshirt freshman, right? And speaking of Boise State, will Chris Marshall finally be able to live up to his recruiting expectation as a wide receiver one at Boise State this year? So let's start with Malachi Nelson first, and we can jump over to Chris Marshall.
Yeah, so Malachi Nelson, he doesn't win the job here. Transferred over this offseason from USC. I tweeted out, either that shoulder's toast or I'm an idiot, possibly both this week. As somebody who was probably the captain of the Malachi Nelson hype train. I said we talked about it on Campus Life this week. So if you don't listen to that show, if you just kind of watch us on YouTube here, you can also hear what me and my co-host had to say over there. Cam Ward Truther, I think he's droppable in normal 12-team, 45-man roster C2C leagues. And this is C2C live. So I think in a Devy league, I definitely wouldn't be holding on to him at this point. I think there were lots of things to point to when he left USC and said it's not the end of the world for him leaving there. But now having left USC and then losing out on a quarterback battle, and no offense to this kid, no offense to Maddox Madsen, but if Malachi Nelson was even half of who we thought he was, it shouldn't have really been a competition. We'll never get the full story about how bad is his shoulder now. Is his shoulder bad at all? Is he bad? I don't know that we'll ever really get an explanation there. But I mean, Madsen has 3 years of eligibility left.
Yeah.
So you figure Nelson is not going to stay here. So he's going to be on his 3rd team in 3 years. It's probably a step down from Boise. What's a step down from Boise that we'd be interested in? Can you think of a quarterback who went through 3 teams in 3 years, Matt, that we have been interested in the past few years? I can't think of any off the top of my head.
3 in 3 years. I don't think so. I mean, not in 3 years.
Technically, Cam Newton went Florida JUCO Auburn.
That is true.
But his hand was forced to go the JUCO route. So I won't necessarily, there were some legal issues there. I won't necessarily.
I was going to say, I mean, there's a shot that your guy's boy, Caden Salter, ends up on a 3rd team, but it won't be in 3 years. So,
and there will also be a step up involved there at some point.
Yes,
if the 3rd team does come into play.
I mean, I don't necessarily think that it has to be a step down. Maybe someone is. We've seen a lot of coaches, college coaches, even some of the best and brightest. I love to just talk about this because it makes me happy inside. Kirby Smart once got rid of Justin Fields for Jake Fromm from State Farm, or Jake, whatever. Everybody makes fun of Jake Fromm from State Farm, whatever. So we've seen very, very smart coaches, some of the best in the world, get rid of really good talent. I'm not trying to compare Malachi Nelson to Justin Fields here, but it doesn't mean that he has to take a step down in competition. Obviously, we would like to, if he does end up transferring, at least stay at the Boise State level, because if he does drop down to something worse, then yes, I would say that, at least from my point of view at that point, all his value would be completely gone. I do agree with you that he's likely droppable at this point, because as you mentioned, and I will give his name since you didn't, Colin Decker, your co-host on Campus Life, I believe said something to the effect of they don't have a hard schedule this year. They have Oregon. That's probably the only team that they will not be favored against this year. So chances are he's likely not going to play horrible enough to get benched for Malachi to come in and take over. So, like, there's a real shot we don't see Malachi at all this year. And as you mentioned, Madsen has 3 years left of eligibility. I don't think Malachi's going to sit for 3 years. And at this point, he's giving me nothing to believe he's going to beat him out next year if he stays, and it's another battle for that job. So I don't know what to think of him. I mean, there's got to be something else going on. I mean, I would understand it if it was just us that was high on him. It's like, okay, clearly we just missed here. Like, it just is what it is. We fell in love. So because I watched a lot of him play for Los Alamitos that year. He was putting the ball everywhere. They played, I want to say it was it Brandon Ennis' school that year? It was a Florida team, and I, for the life of me, cannot remember who it was. I want to say it was the school that Brandon Ennis goes to. They're like highly ranked every single year, and I cannot remember who they were. He did struggle in that game, though. I watched that entire game on a Friday night. No, I think it was actually on a Saturday. He did struggle in that, but like if you watch him go up against some of the best teams in California, he played well. He was able to drop that ball pretty much everywhere he wanted it to. That's why we loved Malachi Lemon as well. Those two had a really great connection. Like, it was there, right? Like, we saw the skills. So, like, why didn't it translate? Was it just the shoulder? Like, I really don't know. Because it was also his non-throwing shoulder. So, like, that's the part that I'm kind of confused about, is, like, how that could really affect his game so much. There's got to be something else going on here. I feel like, yes, heritage. Thank you, Ben Dejo. American heritage. Oh, you were at the game. Very nice. That was great. It was a fun game. The American heritage, like, kicked their butt. But, yeah, so regardless, though, back to the original point, there has to be something else going on here. I don't know what it is. It's extremely, as Brett says in the comments, maybe he isn't good. Maybe, but it's just so hard to believe that when every service and ourselves saw it. And so, like, to me, it's like, who's the last quarterback you can remember, like, falling this bad? Like, as a top, because I think everybody had him at least as a top 3 quarterback in the class. I'll pull it up, but I know he was highly ranked by everybody. I mean, who was the last one that fell on their face this bad?
Especially because usually, like, there's usually 1 or 2, like, really, really highly rated quarterbacks every year that fall flat. And it's almost always the guys that are, like, all tools, no football player. And that's not what Malachi Nelson is. Not to say, like, you know, he's not, I'm trying to think of, like, he's not Cade Klubnik's arm. You know, it's not Malik Murphy as a runner. Like, he's not like, you know, he was mobile enough. He's got a good arm. So it wasn't like, you know, he's just kind of out there relying on that stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. And I mean, you know, it won't be the first guy I miss on. Certainly won't be the last. But yeah, I mean, I think right now he's droppable. And I will say, like, I preach all the time on this show, on every show, on social media, on the stuff I write all year round. Drafting guys early in freshman drafts and startups who specifically are not going to play as freshmen, especially at the quarterback position, is generally a great move, because you don't see falls like this. Like, for him to have fallen this much in stature, having not played a snap in a year, like, it's virtually unprecedented. You do not see this happen for a guy that gets drafted that early. So, I mean, it's not going to deter me at all from that side of things. I still think that's generally speaking the best way to go. Just you know, I'm not exactly sure. I hope eventually we get some sort of answers. Maybe it's an attitude thing, but again, like, there were no rumors of that coming out of high school really with him. So
yeah, no. So just to point out, On 3 Adam is QB5, 24/7 Sports QB5, ESPN QB1, Rivals QB4, all had him as a 5-star. So again, and we had him, I can't remember where everybody stood on him, but I want to say we all had him as a tier 1 quarterback, and he was in at least our top 3. It was I think most of us had him. It wasn't just you. I had him as my QB1 as well. I had him. It was him, Dante Moore, Arch Manning for me. We'll, I'm sure, talk about Dante Moore here in a little bit as well, because while his value is not, you know, cratered as Malachi Nelson's has, it's definitely not great. But yeah, it's hard to me. It's just really hard to think about how we all could have just missed that bad. Because like I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like I can't think of another quarterback that has like fallen that bad that's been a top guy. I have there's not one that comes to the top of my head, at least over the past couple years.
Yeah, same. Some other quarterback battles here. I don't think we need to talk that much about Dylan Raiola. We've talked about him a little bit recently, but he has been named the starter at Nebraska here as a true freshman. He looked the part through spring. He played pretty well in their spring game. Even if he hadn't, I'm not sure there's a lot else on that roster to, it's him, Danny Kalen, and then I think Henrik Harburg are like the three quarterbacks still in that roster, right? I don't think they have anybody else that like a note on a scholarship. So there weren't a lot of other options here, but he is going to start. I think you and I, Matt, have both been on the same page that there's some sneaky skill guys here, right? I think you and I both are the two that have kind of been saying that. It's not Ohio State's wide receiver room. It's not Georgia's running back room, but there's competent guys here at those positions for sure. The offensive line was pretty decent last year, and they return a good chunk of it, although they've got some injuries up front here early on in the before the season even kicks off. I don't know. It's kind of what we expected. Are we worried about anything with him? I just talked about I like the draft guys that aren't really going to play that much as freshmen. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not super worried about it. I mean, the offensive line injuries do scare me a little bit just because he is not the most mobile quarterback, but I think we saw a lot of it throughout his high school stuff. I want to say I know, or at least I'm pretty sure you've said it in like one of those things, like he's like ready. He was ready to play coming out of high school. Like I think he will be fine. He'll go to his checkdowns. He'll move through his reads. I don't think that'll be an issue. And realistically, Nebraska's early season schedule, I guess, depending on what you think of Colorado, is fairly easy. Like there's a realistic shot they will be. And I've talked about this before. I think it's 6 or 7-0 before going in to play Ohio State at the shoe. So, I think Raiola will be good through all that. I mean, Jamal Banks transferred in. I think he has a chance to be really good at wide receiver. We really like Jalen Lloyd as well, the speedy sophomore, the 5'10" guy who could be playing in the slot. They brought in Felix Guy, Isaiah Nayor.
Let's be a little more specific with our language here. I am not buying Jalen Lloyd this offseason.
Well, Chris Moxley likes him. I think Felix did a video on him. So, the Royal, will exclude Austin. The other three hosts of this show kind of like Jalen Lloyd. I know you do like Dante Dowdell, the running back who transferred in, possibly doing a good thing this year or being good for them. I said I didn't say
Guess who's back from the dead?
Who? Gabe Ervin?
Yeah, Gabe Ervin's back from the dead, baby. Sounds like he's been looking good.
I've been touting him for the past 2 years. Woo. I've learned my lesson. I'm not Colin who's just going to keep jumping back in those boats. No, I'm out. I'm out on Gabe Ervin. Ain't happening.
Suit yourself. You're lost.
That's all right. Yeah. Probably is. I take a lot of those as it is. So,
yeah, I do think that's going to be a room where there's a bunch of guys are getting touches.
I just teed you up to brag about your win last week, and you didn't even go.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
I
know that she will be on the other foot. She will be on the other foot. I'm not good enough at this game. Matt, we have an online dynasty over at Campus2Canton.com with a bunch of our members. Matt and I were were matched up again last week against each other. And I might have won. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Not might have. You did. You won.
It got so bad. Matt had to bench his boy Sam Lovett.
I did.
That's how bad it got.
He's playing again though. I put him back out there.
Did you? He's back on the horse.
He's sitting at what was I think 12-12 right now, touchdown interception ratio. So not bad. Working our way through some kinks.
That's why I don't throw the ball.
I probably should stop too.
I think he's going to be fine this year. We did argue over this. Was it you that was saying he was going to get over 3,000 yards?
Yes, I said I think that Dylan Raiola can pass over 3,000 yards this year.
I don't think he gets to 3,000 yards because I think they're going to operate fairly conservatively as an offense. I don't know. They're going to really be opening it up. I don't know that they'll need to open it up a lot, like you said. I mean, the first however many weeks of the season.
Yeah.
Not exactly murder's row schedule anyway.
Perfect time to open it up, though.
I'm not even going to judge him too much on what are going to be the losses.
Mm-hmm.
If he's poor against Ohio State, I'm not going to drill him for that unless he's been, real shaky the rest of the year. And then you're kind of like, okay, like at some point the level's got to increase here. But like, I'm never that hard on true freshman quarterback starters. I think as long as he looks better than competent, which I think is like not that high of an expectation for a guy like him, I think I will probably be on him going into next year, depending on what cost ends up being next year, generally speaking.
So I've got 2 countdowns that I've got to do every single week. Is Dylan Raiola getting over his 3,000 yards? And I said, I think one of you guys was in the live chat. You have to correct me. I want to say it's a Kyle McCord pass for over 3,200 yards with Syracuse this year. And I think I said 25 touchdowns. That's probably going to be one that bites me in the ass. But I got that.
The 25 might be easier than it's like 2 touchdowns a game.
He passed for like 2,900 yards with Ohio State last year with that horrible offensive line. He's playing weaker competition this year. Kyle McCord for Heisman, baby.
He's also thrown to a bunch of dudes I've never heard of.
Aronde Gadsden, Justice Ross Simmons, he'll be all right. I don't remember anybody else in that room. It's just those 2. But
I was gonna say, Yazid Haynes they bring over from Georgia. I mean, I know who he is. I wasn't a fan of him as a recruit, but I don't know. We'll see. I think the touchdowns is more likely than the yards there.
That's right. I'll take whatever win I can get when it comes to Kyle McCord. So,
does his dad still watch the show?
I don't know. I haven't talked to him in quite a bit.
All right, bummer. Chandler Morris at North Texas named the starter. They brought him in there late in the offseason, although there were strong indications he was going there. It honestly got to the point where we're like, maybe he's not going there. But he did. I don't know. I'm pretty interested in this North Texas.
Yeah.
I think, I like the coaching staff there. I like the weapons there actually a lot. I'm probably a little, too, close to that, attached to them now because on my online big CFV dynasty save has been with North Texas, and Landon Sides got real good. Real good. And Ika Ragsdale, I believe, led the country in rushing as a senior. So, but I mean, is this an offense and a quarterback that we want to roster?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the CFF team, I know you guys talk about it, like to give this disclaimer when we say this, I'm not a CFF expert, but they seem to like North Texas and that offense. So, yeah, I think it's a good thing. I mean, he's very much had an up and down college career, I think is fair to say. So, like, I get maybe some hesitation on it, but definitely probably the weakest competition he's ever played. And I like this. He followed the head coach over here, didn't he? Or am I thinking of the other? I feel like there's 2 starting quarterbacks named Chandler. Am I thinking of the wrong one that followed his head coach? I think I am.
You're thinking of Chandler Rogers? I don't know if he did either, but no, because Eric Morris is the coach, and he's formerly he was Cam Ward's coach at Incarnate Word, right? And then went to Washington State with him.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think everybody loves the offense that much. Where did Chandler Rogers go? Because that's probably who I'm thinking of.
He was at Cal.
Cal,
right?
Yeah, that was. I think it was Cal. I think that's what I'm thinking of. Anyways, yeah, good season. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you for adding so much to the conversation there, man.
I thought Moxley was going to be here. That's why I was hoping Mox would come in here and drop like all these Incarnate Ward stats, and then Felix told me he wasn't going to be here, and I was like,
I mean, they were crazy productive when he was there. I mean, that's what got Cam Ward to move up to Washington State. So the one thing I will say is that Incarnate Word was, I don't remember exactly. It might have been even better the year after.
Yeah, they were actually. Yeah.
So, maybe not the best look for Cam Ward or Eric Morris, but who's to say? I
mean, full transparency, there's only 2 names on this list of all these quarterbacks we're about to talk about that I even wanted to talk about. I just wanted to bury them in the list so that you guys didn't know who I wanted to talk about.
I actually find all these guys interesting to talk about. Isaac Wilson at Utah is going to be the backup. Zach Wilson's younger brother. If he's the backup at Utah, we presume probably a better than 50% chance that he's the starter in 2025. Cam Rising, I believe, is done. Or if he, I forget if Cam Rising is one of the guys that actually gets an
He
extra year of
has one more
eligibility,
year.
but
I believe he does.
I
Yeah.
feel like there was, I think he was the guy that came out and said, like, I don't want to
Yeah.
spend any more time in college or something like that. Like, thank you, somebody finally, like this McCormick dude at Miami who's like in his 9th year of eligibility. Like,
I want to say they talked about that on Cover 3, that they mentioned that he said that in an interview that he did not. This would be his final year of college football. So
yeah.
I mean, you know,
I find him an interesting stash. I'm a little. Anytime anybody says I'm banking on something in the Utah passing game that isn't a tight end for any sort of Devy development, NFL potential, or CFF stuff, I'm just like, you're setting yourself up to be very, very disappointed. And so I don't know. The good thing is he's probably going to have his high school team or his former high school teammate there at wide receiver. The kid in this year's class, Jerome Miles. He has not committed yet, but I'm
September 30th.
Pretty sure he's going to go to Utah. Yeah, he's my wide receiver 3 in the class. I actually really, really like him. Like 6'2", 100-ish. Just fast. But I think, a little underrated as a technician as well. But I mean, you wrote excited for him in 2025. Excited is not the right word. What is the right word, Matt? What would you use to say your anticipation of Isaac Wilson taking the starting job at Utah? How are you feeling? Break out the thesaurus.
Just to clarify, that part was actually Felix on the show sheet. That was from last week because we didn't talk about Isaac Wilson. I am not that excited about Isaac Wilson. I actually think Felix had a lot going on last year, so he didn't get to help as much with the freshman guide as he usually does. I think Isaac Wilson was like one of the only profiles he wrote up last year. So I know that I think he's just at this point, he's like obligated to like Isaac Wilson because it's Zach Wilson's little brother.
Yeah.
I did not have Isaac Wilson that high. I didn't think he was that great of a quarterback prospect. I mean, I think it's a good fit for him going to Utah. As you mentioned, like there's not a lot of guys I really like in this wide receiver room. Sure, if Miles comes over there, like Miles, especially with him being the teammate, we have him as a 98th percentile athlete. I actually am a little surprised we don't have a mile per hour for him, but I mean, Allen Robinson, Julio Jones, Traylon Burks, Jordy Nelson are kind of like his athletic comps, like very good wide receiver. So like that is intriguing to me somewhat if Miles does come over there and join Isaac Wilson, but it's always been a team that's been run first, play defense. Whittingham's not going anywhere. It's like I just don't know what I really think of Isaac Wilson. I didn't even think he was better than his brother, and I was not that high on Zach. So like I want to see it at Utah before I say I'd be excited to roster him.
I had Isaac Wilson in my rankings as a freshman as QB 16 in last year's class. And I had him literally the players right around him with, very, very similar grades. You could, with the nature of how close they are, you could mix and match them any which way. I had Elijah Brown, who's at Stanford, had some good things said about him there. We'll see what he turns into. Tyler Cherry, who's at Indiana. We think he's probably the next guy there. Michael Hawkins, who's at Oklahoma. Situation a little less certain. And then Michael Van Buren and CJ Carr were in that range as well.
Yeah.
So it was like a bucket of guys that I think could be pretty good CFF players depending on how things break. Maybe they have to switch teams or something like that to reach an ultimate ceiling. But I don't think that's a bad player at all. I'm cautiously optimistic. That he'll be, if he plays as well as Cam Rising from like a production standpoint, it's not bad.
Yeah,
it's not bad. It's worth a spot on the bottom of trying to carry 6 or 7 active quarterbacks at any given time. That feels like a guy that would be the 4th or 5th guy, maybe.
Just to clarify, I had him in the exact same range, tier 3. The only difference is I had Colin Hurley and Tyler Cherry right around him as well, both below him, but right around him.
I also had Colin Hurley a couple spots behind him. So you just did the Colin thing. You just did the Colin bit.
I like Colin. Colin's my boy.
I got 2 people drafting off my rankings here. Man, it's a lot of pressure. Some other confirmed starters here this week, Matt. Lenore Sellers has finally been announced as the guy at South Carolina. I think we already all knew that. Malik Murphy at Duke, same there. Arizona State, Sam Levitt wins that job. There have been some Jeff Sims whispers over the past couple weeks. Washington State, a big one that CFF C2C fans were looking forward to. That's going to be John Mateer over Zach Eckhouse. And San Diego State true freshman Danny O'Neal is going to start right off the rip here. He 3-star quarterback in this year's class, kind of was a Sean Lewis commit at Colorado and then followed him over here to San Diego State. I don't know. Any guys? You said you have a couple guys buried in here that you're excited for that you really want to talk about.
Well, I mean,
now let's talk about Sam Levitt.
Dang.
You've lost privileges after you benched him last week against me. Anybody else though? Who are you excited for here?
The guy you just mentioned. So I actually messed this up. I sent a tweet out earlier this morning saying I had written up about a quarterback, I said 3-star freshman, not realizing that he was a freshman in this year's class. For some reason, I thought he was a freshman last year. Is Danny O'Neal. I wrote up about him on the website, actually. I put up the fact that I really liked him. He was a name that not a lot of people were talking about. And I did put in there what you mentioned, because I don't think a lot of people realize that he really was there because of Sean Lewis. It was not Dion. Now, he doesn't show a lot of velocity on his deep throws. It was a lot of short and intermediate stuff, but he did have really good accuracy. I think that like his arm is kind of the big question mark for him, but he did show some ability to play out of structure and throw from different arm angles. And why I find this very intriguing, why I wanted to talk about him, is we all like Sean Lewis here. We think of what he did at Kent State. And then obviously what he did in the first half of the season with Shedeur Sanders. You know, I really need to just get this from Mike Valor, because I just keep saying Mike has it. I've never actually written it down, but like the drop off of Shedeur Sanders in that second half of the season when they went away from Sean Lewis as the offensive coordinator really kind of like showed a massive difference. But if you go really through Sean Lewis's career, going all the way back to the time he was the offensive coordinator and QB coach at Syracuse with quarterback Eric Dungy. For 9 games, he averaged 32.52 fantasy points per game. He only played 9 games that year. We took over at Kent State as the first year with Woody Barrett. I don't even know who that is. 22.79 fantasy points per game. Then, obviously, we had the Dustin Crum era for 3 years. Dustin Crum put up a ton of points, 42.1, 32.76, and 26.81. And then Colin Schlee with the 22.88. All of those go anywhere from a top 6 quarterback to a top 21 quarterback. I understand Danny O'Neal is a true freshman, but like I think he fits what why am I thinking Colin Schlee? Goodness gracious. What Sean Lewis fits what Sean Lewis does. I don't think that San Diego has a very tough schedule. They're getting Mountain West competition. Like I actually think Danny O'Neal has some very sneaky CFF upside, not even just this year, but again, a guy's coming as a true freshman, likely going to be the starting quarterback for them for 4 years in a row. Like, he's a guy that if he's available, I'm not even just watch listing him. He will be one of my first waiver wire pickups if I've already gone through my drafts, because I think he has a chance to really do something as a CFF guy this year. Like, I know this may sound crazy, but like I believe so much in Sean Lewis and what I have. Like I had Danny O'Neal graded as a tier 3 quarterback for me. Like I actually really liked it. Now, granted, some of that was again going with Sean Lewis, and I thought Shedeur going on to the NFL after that, he was going to have a chance to kind of be the guy with Colorado. But now step down in competition, I think is fair to say at San Diego. He could be a guy I wouldn't be surprised if he's like a top 36 quarterback in CFF this year with Sean Lewis and what I think he can do as a quarterback. Because he does bring some rushing upside. I don't think he's going to run as much. Like there's a couple years Crum had like 700 yards rushing. Colin Schlee, we know obviously could. I don't remember off the top of my head Danny O'Neal being that good as a rushing quarterback. But like just with his accuracy in his short and intermediate areas and everything, I think he could be really good moving forward.
As of, when this news broke a couple of days ago, was in 4 supplemental drafts. One is a really big CFF dynasty, and the other 3 are all C2C drafts. And I took O'Neal in 2 of the 4, and the 2 that I didn't take him basically immediately after were because the person on the clock or, right after took them essentially. And I think it's just because, like you said, there's a lot of potential for some CFF upside here. Again, I'm not banking on a San Diego State 3-star quarterback to ascend to the NFL, but I do think there's a lot more than that when it comes to C2C leagues. And just to give you a hint of what a yearly schedule looks like for San Diego State, here's their schedule this year, Matt. Texas A&M Commerce, Oregon State, Cal, Central Michigan, Hawaii, Wyoming, Washington State, Boise State, New Mexico, UNLV, Utah State, Air Force.
9. I give them 9 games. They're probably going to be very competitive. I don't think they have any shot at beating Boise, Probably Washington State or Oregon State.
Or Cal. Cal, it's like in the C2C winning edge stuff, Cal is like 56th.
And they do always have a good, was it Fry, right? He always seems to have that like team's defense kind of, they always seem to have a good defense. So maybe I shouldn't have given Cal. So 7.
So, and still, and I think when you're drafting him in these kind of leagues, I want to be careful here, Matt. We're not necessarily saying that like we expect that this year from him.
I am top 36 quarterback.
Okay. I'm not.
I think he's got a shot to be a top 36 CFF quarterback this year.
I stand corrected. Matt thinks that. I would caution and say, even if he's not, let's assume you're right, Matt, but let's say even if he's not.
If I'm not. It's not like I've been wrong before, but if
off chance he's not.
That I'm wrong,
As long as he's not terrible, I think this is like not a 1-year play. I think Sean Lewis has gone there to build something again here, with a little more underneath him than he had at Kent State. So, you don't want to put too much on him, but I do find him pretty interesting. The rest of those names, Malik Murphy, not interesting at all, but I do think the rest of them.
No, I really wasn't interested in anybody else, but I just didn't want to like openly say I want to talk about Danny O'Neal. I wanted it to be like a surprise, So I've done a little bit more research lately on these shows, and it seems to Felix just kind of checks out when I do that stuff. So like, I just wanted to not let him know when I was going to come in with the hard hitting stats and everything.
It just seems very weird for Felix to have checked out on a show. When
that's true, yeah. That's
really not a fan of that. That surprises me, but all right. Let's redraft the 2023 freshman class here, Matt. And here are the rules. It's going to be the 2 of us. It's supposed to be 4 of us on here tonight, but everybody else chickened out. We are going to include some of the higher profile names that would have been floating around in the large majority of supplemental drafts. You'll always get some jerk sitting here saying these guys were all gone in my league 18 months ago. But we're going to put guys that were for the most part available in supplemental drafts last year. We're going to do 2 rounds. I don't think we need to spend like that much time talking about all these guys. If there's an interesting pick in there, maybe we'll discuss them a little bit. I'm feeling just so magnanimous tonight, Nat, that I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, but I put you first on the sheet. So just to give everybody a list again, so I will say Felix compiled this list. He went through a bunch of his leagues that showed that a lot of these guys were available in the supplemental draft. So just to give you guys an idea of the names that are available of like upperclassmen that Austin or myself could take: Carson Beck, Squirrel White, Ladd McConkey, Dorian Singer, Shador Sanders, Travis Hunter, Jamari Thrash, Joe Milton, Taylon Green, Devontae Walker, Luke Lachey, LaQuint Allen, Sam Wigloose, Tez Johnson, Ray Davis, Rocco Beck, Colby Young, and Arik Gilbert. So those will probably, I would imagine some of those guys might make it into this draft.
Are people taking Arik Gilbert last year?
I was actually kind of surprised he put that in there too.
Wasn't he already arrested by that point?
I didn't even realize he was still in. Since the Michael Mayer thing, like I've just erased Arik Gilbert from my mind. So, with the number 1 pick, then, I think I'm taking Nico. I really liked what he did in that Iowa Bowl game. Again, with most of Iowa's starters out there on defense, while he didn't do a ton passing, we got to see what he was able to do. I think he had 3 rushing touchdowns in that game. I think they will use his legs more. I mean, he does have an NFL skill with that arm. I think that he is someone, obviously a little still worried about the size, but I think he is a guy who can go in the first round. For me, it was going to come down between him and Jackson Arnold. And I just haven't been as high on Jackson Arnold as everybody else. I do worry about, I think that the arm is lacking a little bit. And I know that he was really good at rushing in high school, but I don't know that that's going to translate as well to the college level. I just don't see that incredible athlete like I do out of Nico. So I would take, with everything that we know now in redrafting a class, Nico would be my number 1 player.
The perk of getting to draft today is that we're even closer for one of these players to getting him on the field, where we weren't sure. We had to wait 1 year. We had to wait 2 years. But I think I'm going to go Arch Manning here with my pick, with the 2nd pick. Looks pretty good in spring for Texas.
Yeah.
I think the weapons are going to be there. I have, at this juncture, a lot more faith in Steve Sarkisian to put everything around him that needs to be correct than I do with Brent Venables. This isn't a shot of Venables. This isn't saying he's not doing a good job at it. I have more faith.
Not Venables. Now I'm blanking on name.
Venables is the head coach
Jackson.
at Oklahoma.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about Nico.
No.
Oh, my bad. See, I just interrupted you.
That's hypo. Yeah.
I thought you were crapping on my pick for taking Nico.
No.
Go ahead, continue. Sorry.
Sorry. I'm taking
we'll edit this in post. Colin, let me text him right now.
I'm taking Arch Manning here, second overall.
Okay. I don't really love anybody here. That's the problem.
I actually goofed up, by the way, on that pick. That's not who I should have taken.
Really? Who would you want to take?
I should have taken Carson Beck.
That's who I'm going to take, actually. Yeah. Okay. And I don't love Carson Beck, but there's just been so much talk about him going into the first round. I would find it very hard for him not to have a good college season this year, even with a little bit of a tougher schedule for Georgia. They've got the offensive line, got the running backs, got a decent enough wide receiver core that I think like it would be shocking to me if he doesn't go in the first round. I still don't know that I see this incredible fantasy asset out of Carson Beck, both on the college or NFL level. But if he gets the first round draft capital, like he at least becomes like his value just increases. So I'll take Carson Beck. I don't love it though. I have to be honest.
All right. And just looking through the players I have available to me. So here's one where this is just like a total, like take the known versus the unknown. I think you have to take Ladd McConkey here.
Interesting.
I think you have to, knowing what we know now. Second round pick to the Chargers.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, I do still have some longevity concerns. We shall see. But I think, you know, if I'm taking, how many of the wide receivers today do you feel really comfortable in this class? Like, is it like if I said I'm going to take Zach Branch with this pick, do I feel like that positive that Zach Branch will have a significantly more value long term than a guy like Ladd McConkey already has? I'm not 100% sure. Like if I was in a supplemental draft and you said you can take this wide receiver, he won't really do anything for you for CFF this year, but he's going to be an early second round pick next year.
Yeah,
sure.
So that's fair. I will take then Travis Hunter. That was where I thought you were going to go. Definitely still needs to improve on some things, but I think just how explosive of an athlete he is. And I definitely worry about we've talked a lot about it. If he were really to just commit to being a wide receiver, there's a realistic shot he'd probably be a top 5, top 10 wide receiver for us in college football right now. I think I have him top 15. I think with that kind of talent, if he likely has a chance to go first round into the NFL and do something. And I would take that at this point over most of the freshman wide receivers. Like I don't love any of these guys here. I definitely know I'm betting a lot on upside here with Hunter, but like I've seen enough to think that he can find a way to make this happen. I think you said it actually on. No, you didn't say this on Campus Live. Whoops. This was a call. I don't know if I should say it now. Do you want me to say it? I know that like
I don't know what you're going to say.
Don't love you. So we talked recently. We had a meeting with our Devi team the other day, and we were talking about how we actually think him getting away from Colorado could be a very good thing for Hunter.
Yeah,
and like 100%. His development and everything. Well, some people, take that as like a bad thing. So, but I agree with that. I think I don't think he'll transfer out to another college. He will go to the NFL after this year. And I think him actually going to an NFL team where I'd actually love for him to go is to your Steelers, because Mike Tomlin, I think, would be able to get with how great of it. I love Mike Tomlin. It's the only thing I will compliment the Steelers on. I think he's a great head coach. Like if you were to go to somewhere like that and then just kind of really buckle down and work on that wide receiver position, like I think he has a chance to be an incredible player. So I would take Hunter over all the freshman wide receivers.
That's the only nice thing you'll say about the Steelers?
I think they've got great ownership as well, too. Probably, I would argue, one of the best ownerships in all of NFL football with everything they've done. The Rooneys have been, I think, a class act organization for the most part. That's it. That's the only.
What about the Bumblebees? Are you a fan of the Bumblebees?
No.
The jerseys? No.
No.
Oh, I love those jerseys. I think they're.
I mean, of course you do.
Amazing.
I can't love the jerseys. I can't love anything else about them. I mean, I might have to convert to being a Steelers fan because my boy, you can't even see it, but this one right here, Justin Fields, when he eventually takes over for Russell Wilson.
We'll welcome you with open arms, Matthew. We'll have you come out here to Pittsburgh, stay with us for a weekend. We'll go to a game. We'll have a lot of fun. I'll show you around the city. You'll love it. You'll become a fan instantly. I know you will.
And then I'll get disowned by my entire family. So
yeah. That's all right. New family, Pittsburgh. Here we are. I wrote Zachariah Branch next up here. And while I think, we've talked recently about there's a little more risk here than I think people are assuming right now. I just think from what today's value is and what tomorrow's value probably will be, I think you kind of have to take him here with the next pick. So.
Oh, man, this is getting a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
Take Shadur, you want to.
I do not. I will take Justice Haynes. He was a tier 1 running back for me. Obviously, right now, we don't have any injury issues to worry about. I did my best, even though you crapped on me in the Campus Life episode about my doctorate degree, whatever it is, however you say it, with me getting the LCL and PCL wrong is what it is. I read that off the internet, so the internet was wrong. But no injury history or concerns at the moment to worry about. I actually think that he will be fine for Alabama this year. He was a tier 1 running back for me. I think he likely is the only other running back besides Baxter that has a chance to be like a day 2 guy moving forward into the NFL. So I will take Justice Haynes here, just especially with the conversation we had to start off the show with running backs and everything else.
I'm going to take Lenora Sellers with the next pick.
Interesting. Okay.
The recruiting guys have been talking a lot recently about this now called the star rating for quarterbacks and how there's a really, really strong correlation between, and I forget exactly how they phrased it on the show they did the other day or the YouTube video or whatever that they put out. It's not exactly a 1-to-1 correlation of athleticism, like pure unadulterated athleticism to NFL potential, but raw athleticism is part of it. Ball velocity, the ability to play multiple sports, and by multiple we mean like 3 plus if we can get it, has a lot of correlation. You kind of combine all these things together, and basically players that score over a 90 out of 100 on this metric. Not everyone turns out to be a star in the NFL, but if you go through a list of guys that we have that are current starters in the NFL, pretty much all of them were above 90 or very, very close to it. I think what they said, like over 85 is kind of where they really start getting a little worried about it if you're not above that. Sellers, one of the few guys in the class that was over 90. So I would encourage you, if you're here on the YouTube channel watching it, to go find that video. Came out last Friday, Thursday or Friday.
Yes. Yeah.
I would say go watch it, think about it a little bit, chew on it. But yeah, I think, Jackson Arnold is not above a 90. Sellers is. So there you go.
All right. I'll take Jonte at this point. He was a guy that we really liked at wide receiver. Still broke the year 1-0. I thought played fairly well as a true freshman. I think this year will be even more telling for him. Obviously, seems like a little bit more of a crowded room with the 3 guys that transferred in with Golden, Bolden, and Bond. But I think he's going to end up actually being really good. I would not be surprised if he ends up leading Texas as the receiver as a junior and still ends up being a first-round pick. Like, I love the player overall. Definitely, he probably actually went around this range in freshman drafts. So, like, you're not really getting any more of a value for him at this point. But yeah, I'll take Jonte Cook now.
This is the first one that I think it's actually been like difficult to figure out exactly the direction that I want to go here. Because I do think there's some interesting players still on the board. I'm going to take Squirrel White.
Okay.
I'm going to take Squirrel here. I should have taken Jackson Arnold, but I think Squirrel White there is top 5 CFF wide receiver upside there this year.
Yeah.
I think he's been underrated in that regard all offseason. If Nico is who we think he is, and Nico, for like instance, in these, like in the underdog best ball stuff, is getting drafted really early in terms of, quarterbacks. There's not enough other guys on this roster. Like, if you think he's going to throw, he's not really much of a rusher. I know he had a couple of rush touchdowns in that bowl game, but he's not really a rusher. Yeah. So, if that's got to be you're thinking he's going to get close to 4,000 passing yards, that's got to go somewhere. There's not a lot of other, real talent on that wide receiver on that team. So White, I'll take him here.
Man, you just talked about the QSI, the quarterback star index, and how big a deal it is. Do you know where I'm going?
Your boy you benched. Your boy you benched.
Absolutely, Sam Levitt, which I think Austin's. You're not. You're Austin. Alfred said in our chat that he was a 90. We have met technically as an 88.6, but one of the higher ones in that class. I love Sam Levitt. I've talked before. I think he's the perfect fit with that Kenny Dillingham offense. Is going to be really good for them moving forward. I think he's going to be a first-round NFL draft pick too. I'll just go ahead and say it. Why not? I'm throwing out all kinds of hot takes tonight. I love Sam Levitt. Was a guy that you probably could have gotten in the 4th or 5th round last year. Now we're taking him I shouldn't say we. I'm taking him in the 1st round of this redraft of the 2023 freshman class. Above my boy Aiden Childs too, which hurt. I'm not gonna lie. That hurt a little bit. It's like picking my favorite son.
Well, Childs will still be there at your next pick if you want him, because I do think you have to stop the slide here with and take Jackson Arnold. So presumptive starter. Well, not presumptive. He's going to be the starter at Oklahoma this year. I think Oklahoma is another, like, I have just some teams that I have a gut feeling are going to be worse than what the public whatever kind of has them at. Arizona is one of them. I have a bad feeling about Arizona. I have a bad feeling about Oklahoma this year. The offensive line, I'm just real iffy on. And with that schedule, with blooding in a brand new starting quarterback, the wide receiver room is not terribly experienced. The guys that are, there's some, Andrew Anthony, what's his health look like? Farouk didn't really perform what we thought he would do last year. Is he as good as people thought? Jaden Gibson is out. It's Nick Anderson, Deion Burks are kind of the other guys. And then behind that, it's like a lot of nothing. So I do think there's some question marks here. But I think the starting quarterback at Oklahoma, you probably got to take them here. So, yeah.
Do you want to recap the 1st round for the folks really quick before I make my pick?
Felix is screaming right now as he listens to this back on podcast form. Someone recap the 1st round. First 12 picks here, guys. Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee. Arch Manning, quarterback, Texas. Carson Beck, quarterback, Georgia. Ladd McConkey, wide receiver, now with the Chargers. Travis Hunter, corner/wide receiver with Colorado. Zachariah Branch, wide receiver, USC. Justice Haynes, running back, Alabama. Lenoris Sellers, quarterback, South Carolina. Jonte Cook, wide receiver, Texas. Squirrel White, wide receiver, Tennessee. Sam Levitt, quarterback, Arizona State. And Jackson Arnold, quarterback, Oklahoma. Matt, take it away. 201.
I just want to say really quick on Sam Levitt, I'm really disappointed. I was just pulling up our recruiting grades of him last year because, like, I just so wanted to be, like, by far the highest guy on him. I was barely the highest guy. No, I was the highest above David, but you were actually right there with me. Everybody was. I thought someone had him lower. No, we were all in that 74. Me and David practically had him at a 77. The lowest was, I think, Alfred at 73, but we all apparently liked him. I'm misremembering that. I feel like I'm the only one who liked him, and I'm going to let those are the true facts of the story. You guys all hated him. Sam Levitt's my guy, and we're going to move forward. So, man, this is tough. I really don't. I'm going to take Mekhi Lemon. Is that who you wanted?
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out how far I could let him go.
Same.
Obviously, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, I gave my case on why I think he could end up leading the wide receiver room for USC this year. I know you were by far the highest actually out of our entire recruiting team on Mekhi Lemon last year. You talked so much about how great of a route runner he was and everything. Like, I think he has a chance to be really good for USC this year and moving forward. I still think he has the talent to possibly be a first-round draft pick. So I like getting him here. There's two other players I was thinking about right here, but like I just don't think I can get a talent like Mekhi Lemon further in the draft. So
then I'm going to take Eugene. No, I lied. I'm going to take Carnell Tate. Okay. So I forgot he's still on the board, and I do technically have him higher than Eugene Wilson by about 10 spots. I don't know. He's like unspectacular, but it's a good player. I don't think he'll ever be the wide receiver one at Ohio State. That probably hurts him a little bit. Yeah. But we've also seen guys who were never really considered the wide receiver one at Ohio State be valued pretty highly by the NFL. Chris Olave comes to mind. There's been others as well. So I'll put Tate in there.
It's insane to me to think that we are now at pick 14 and Dante Moore, Malachi Nelson are still on the board. And that would have been, top 5 picks for both those guys last year. So it is kind of interesting to see that. At this point, I'm going to stop. I don't feel great about this pick. I will say that right now. But, I'm going to take Cedric Baxter. I just think with his ability of what I think he could be as like a true workhorse running back. I know he wasn't great last year, but I watched a lot of his games for Edgewater at high school, and he was just so good. I think he is a all-around back. And I do think, if he comes back healthy with what we've seen Sark do with his running backs as well. I know you talked about, earlier you believe more in Sark and what he can do with Arch Manning. I think a lot of that comes with just all 3 positions, really. Sark has proven it from the quarterback, wide receiver, and running back position, not even through college, but moving those guys into the NFL. Obviously, the health, you have to be a little bit worried about it, but he wasn't the most shiftiest running back anyway. So if he still runs a little bit stiff, I don't care because of the knee, which, for Austin, if you didn't know, the LCL and the PCL, one's on the back of the knee, one's on the side of the knee. Oh. And it, I think it affects your elusiveness. This is my doctorate degree tells me. But yeah, so I'll take Cedric Baxter here.
Dr. Bruning, MD. All right. I'm going to take Eugene Wilson, who I was going to take last pick before I remember the Carnell Tate was still on the board. Florida wide receiver. And I think at minimum, probably a pretty good CFF option here over the next couple of years. I'm just real hesitant when you get a guy out of high school who is basically all slot and is going to go to college and probably be all slot. That's very limiting right off the bat from a size skill set perspective. We've never really seen him be a field stretcher. I want to see him have that in his bag so that he's got a little more of a complete profile. But I think, here is a fine spot for him.
So I don't really love any of the wide receivers here. So I'll take Caden Fegan, 99th percentile athlete, likely a starting running back for Illinois this year, 20 miles per hour, 250 pounds. Just give me a guy who's probably locked into day 2 draft capital as long as he just, produces and continues to run that fast at that size. Again, we talked a lot at the beginning of the show about the running back position and kind of losing this kind of running back. So give me a guy who I think projects forward to be kind of like a workhorse running back.
Give me Caleb Jackson, running back at LSU here with the 206. I'm a little concerned about the weight gain here this offseason, and it sounds like tea leaves very unclear here to me in terms of what's being reported out of LSU and their hierarchy of the running back room there. But I'm going to choose to believe that this is one of the backfields where over the first few games of the season, the staff kind of figures it out and the dude emerges. And I think Caleb Jackson is the dude there and the guy. And so, the athletic profile, he's a scary guy. I legit don't think linebackers and DBs want to tackle him if they don't have to. Those kind of running backs are rare. We just talked about it. And unlike Fegan, Fegan runs a little soft. That is definitely not one thing you can accuse Caleb Jackson of. So
All right. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna take Tez Johnson. I mean, obviously, I think he could end up having another really good year this year. If he does that, I mean, again, I know he's a little bit on the smaller side, but we actually have seen the NFL not be afraid to draft these smaller wide receivers over the past couple of years. I don't know that he's a day 2 guy. I still think he's probably closer to day 3. But if he does have another successful year at Oregon, he's probably going to be a top CFF asset. If he does do that again, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities to think he jumps into day 2 draft capital. So I just don't I don't love any of the other freshman wide receivers here. I don't really love that I'm taking him over. Maybe I'm letting my bias of what I think Dante Moore is at this point, but I'll stick with Tez Johnson. I know. I was just trying to find the coolest name on the list at this point as well.
So the player pool that Felix gave us is a little limiting.
Yeah.
There's a couple players here that I do like. It's a couple players that now that I know what their NFL future is, I'm significantly less interested. Devontae Walker. Probably the chief among those. I'm going to take. Man, you guys you're making me take dudes that I don't really want to take here, man.
Dante Moore is still there if you want him. So was Malachi Nelson.
I'm going to take Eric Singleton.
Okay.
I'm going to take Eric Singleton, and I have him right in a range here with a bunch of other wide receivers from this class. Kevin Concepcion, Deuce Robinson, Alec Anor was not available apparently for us to be selected. He probably would have been.
He probably would have been.
As well.
That's probably an oversight on Felix.
But people weren't taking him, so I get why I feel like
that's fair.
If you could point to somebody in one of your leagues that had Alec Anor rostered before he nuked Travis Hunter on national television, I want to hire that guy at C2C immediately.
There was a guy named, I think it was like something close to like Schmatt Mooning or something like that. You should look for him.
Schmatt Mooning.
Is
he a doctor by any chance? Because we could use one of those around.
We don't like those. I know you don't like those doctors on Twitter. You probably have him muted, so that's probably why you don't know who he is.
I'll take Eric Singleton here. I don't feel that strongly about Eric Singleton, for the record.
Yeah.
But he's got an intriguing skill set.
Oh boy, I am actually torn between a couple players at this point. I don't know that I really want to take. How many picks do I have left? Where's the show sheet at?
You have 2 more.
Oh man, so I can only get to talk about 2 more players. I'm gonna take Aiden Giles. I know that he does not. I think our athletic stuff on him is wrong. I'm just gonna be flat out. He is not a 20th percentile athlete. I think that is wrong. I've seen him run by too many defenders on the college football field to think I'm a 20th percent, not probably like a 2 percentile athlete, but you get my point. I think he's much better than what we have in the database. I think he's going to have a really good year for Michigan State this year. I know someone much smarter than me in this space, Nate Marquise, has said that he would not be surprised if Aiden Giles is not talked about as one of the best quarterbacks in college football overall after this season. And I agree with Nate. I've said the Big Ten. Wouldn't be surprised if it is college football. So to get him here, I'm thrilled. I will take my boy Aiden Giles.
All right. I'm running out of.
There's 2 guys that I really want, actually.
There are a couple guys here that I'm like really considering as well. I'm gonna go with Abu Sama with my next.
Okay.
Pick. Okay. Iowa State running back, and not because I have a ton of conviction on Abu Sama like himself, the player, but I do think that he is probably going to be the starter there this year. I think that offense is going to be pretty decent. I think he's got an NFL skill set. Like I do. Now, like, is is it good enough to be NFL level? That's my question. But I think like the things that he can do, like if he continues to build on those, is like an NFL skill set.
So I'm just going to kind of take the I'm probably going to say this wrong. What is it? Is it self-aggrandizing? Is that how you say that, right?
Maybe.
I mean, I'm torn between three players here. I'm going to take Cam Cook, but I'm thinking Rico Flores and Noah Rogers were actually the other two. I know Noah Rogers ended up being the year 1-0. Rico Flores broke multiple year 1-0s. I actually think he could lead UCLA. There's a lot of positive talk about him out of the game. I'm not sure if you're looking at me because of Rico Flores or because of Noah Rogers. Which one are you questioning here?
Flores.
I mean, look, I know he's not a great athlete,
but for 1,100 yards as a team this year.
I mean, look, he's going to be the wide receiver 1 for UCLA. I don't know. They will only throw for 11. If they throw for 1,100 yards, he might get 800 of them.
Wait, isn't what's his name still there?
J. Michael Sturdivant, yeah, but he's been dropping a lot of balls apparently in camp. They've talked about how Flores has actually had the best hands out of everybody on that team. Like, look, I don't love Rico Flores, but he broke multiple year one. He was the best freshman wide receiver at Notre Dame.
You're taking him over Kevin Concepcion?
I don't think Kevin Concepcion is that good, if you want me to be honest. Like, I just don't. I know, like, everybody fell in love with him, but I don't think he's that good. Just being honest. But yeah, him, Noah Rogers was the other one because he's getting a lot of love as well, even though he was a year 1-0. But I'm taking Cam Cook. I'm going to take my boy Cam Cook. I think he has an amazing year at TCU this year. You wouldn't let me talk a lot about Sam Levitt earlier, so I'll get at least one of my guys in here. Cam Cook.
The names that I am considering here, I am considering Shedeur in this spot. Luke Lachey, Tyler Haas, a tight end, Kevin Concepcion, Darius Taylor, and LaQuint Allen are like all of the names.
Noticeably, Dante Moore, Malachi Nelson.
Not considering either of them. Yeah. I'm going to go Shedeur here. I think at that point, like I think you have to take him here. I don't have like that strong of a take here. I do think like he's getting the stuff that all the Deion fanboys wave in your face is that everyone's projecting him to be first round pick next year. I don't know that necessarily always means a lot. I think you can go back and you look at all of the way too early first round mocks, essentially the consensus from the past 5 to 7 years, and they're pretty 50-50 ish, and sometimes not even that on the guys that are going to go first round. And I think the guys that they generally are right on are guys that are like Heisman, have like won a Heisman, or like have strung together multiple years already, where Shedeur really only has one. And I'm sorry, like I'm just not considering anything he did at Jackson State in terms of like an NFL like product. Like it's just there's nothing really there that's projectable. I mean, the last player from that size of a school that went to the NFL and was good at quarterback, doesn't really happen. So I'm ignoring that. So he's essentially had 1 year and he was not very good at the end of the year. But I do think you also have to consider that a little bit, that maybe he does go higher than he should.
It's fair.
Because of everything around him. So if you're saying, that he's going to end up going in that range, then I think you have to take him in one of these first 2 rounds. So,
yeah, I mean, I still think he's a second rounder, but I've seen a lot of talk about him being not only just a top 10 pick, number 1 overall. So if you can get that, regardless of what you think of the player, if you can get that here in the second round, it's a steal. I do want to bring this up. My bad, Cam Ward.
I forgot about this. I'm sorry.
So did I. Yeah. So he said in the comments, I know you guys have your show sheet to stick to, but can you touch on Chris Marshall's potential at Boise State this year, maybe the NFL potential? So, I mean, if I remember correctly, he was a fair, like, I know we had him fairly fast. I don't remember what he was in athlete. Okay.
Oh,
5-star. But from everything I've seen from the Boise State camp stuff, and I believe on our stuff, like, he's not even projected to be like one of the main guys, right? It's mostly I always forget how to say his name.
We have him as one of the 3 starters on Winning Edge, along with Caples and
is it Strachan, right? Is that the one I always mess up?
It's not. It's
Bolt.
It's Caples, Marshall, and I'm going to pull it up here real quick because we just talked about it this week on Campus Life.
I'm trying to think of who else is there. Austin Bolt.
We have Cam Camper, Caples, and Marshall as the 3 starters.
Gotcha.
But like realistically in practice, they've said that there's like then Bolt and Strawn have kind of been the other 2 that have been like pretty solid through camp.
Yeah, I mean, my fear would be with him this year, Cam Moore Truther, is forgot who. I don't know how to say his name. I know it was Andy Avalos was the head coach. When he got fired, they promoted up. I think it was the offensive coordinator. I always say his name wrong. Boise State fans come for me. But they actually ran the ball more in the second half of the season when he took over than they did when Avalos was the head coach. I think that they stick with that, especially having Genty in the backfield. So I just don't know what to think of. I don't think Marshall has a big year at Boise State. Doesn't mean he can't be good from an NFL potential standpoint, but like I don't know that I trust Madsen either to really be tossing the ball all over the place and supporting multiple top wide receivers. So,
I don't think he's rosterable in leagues right now. Firmly a wait and see guy. It's funny because like we talked about this a lot when he was at Texas A&M, and we were like, this is kind of a bad break for him.
Yeah.
Because like it would just got to the point like where Jimbo had to get rid of people for breaking the rules. Like it just hit the point where like the next person that breaks a rule, I don't care what the rule is, you're gone. And he was the next guy. And granted, what he did was not particularly smart anyway. But it's funny because like going into college, we're like, we'd never heard anything about this dude's attitude problems. And then he gets kicked out of Ole Miss as well, or like dismissed from Ole Miss or whatever. And then it like, because a bunch of stuff comes out and then you don't know how much of it's like people piling on where like actually he had a bunch of different concerns that really weren't necessarily like available to the world, but like were kind of known by some folks that kind of came out after. So all to say, I think he might just firmly be a knucklehead category. And so for me, I just have no interest in knuckleheads. No, I don't think that this is a guy that I'm buying right now. Now, I obviously, if he's sitting there for free and he kind of comes out gangbusters to start the year, then yeah, I think maybe you start to pivot. And I don't think the athletic ability is at all in question here. I think it's between the years, and quite frankly, I think those guys don't necessarily figure it out at 20. They look back at 35 and think about it, and the light comes on then. So
it's fair.
Hope better for him than that, but yeah.
It's fair. My light just recently came on, 35-ish. So
you never ask a lady her age, and obviously a doctor either. So
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well,
we age like fine wine, doctors. So
that is going to do it for tonight's show, guys. We apologize to Kirk Herbstreit. That the Marshall question. Herbstreit can thank the Cam Ward Truther for bumping us off there, but we will get him rescheduled for next week. Until next time, guys. I'm Austin.
Oh, and this is Matt. Oh, we're doing the Campus Live
Good
one.
night.
All right.
Good luck. Yeah.